Welcome back to Late Night Reading Hour. We read Communion. So I thought I'd take just a little bit of time. This won't be too long of a video, I don't think, and just do a little review of what we read, what I enjoyed, what I thought, what questions I have, and where I'm coming from reading this story. And if you'd like to have your own conversation in the comments, go for it. I'd like to know what you think. So this was my first read through of Communion. A really good friend of mine let me borrow the book upon his recommendation that I read it, and that is true courtesy. If I recommend someone a book and I have it, I will put it in their hands. I do lose a lot of books that way, but I find that what comes around goes around, you know? And so I didn't really have much of a context for this book other than having seen the movie um many years ago, and I don't really remember it, but it did make me skeptical about reading this book because I remember it being pretty cheesy. I also had come across this book when I was living in a warehouse. It was like the one book that was there, and it's terrified me because it was the picture of the actual the sketch of the alien, the picture of the sketch, and I took one look at that book and I said, "Oh boy, I'm not prepared in my life to read this quite yet." But isn't that nice? Isn't that nice that I've come to a point in life where I feel prepared to read Communion? So those two sort of experiences shaped my presumptions about this book, and I have to say that I was really pleasantly surprised at how easy it was to read, but not in a not in a bad way. It was easy to read because it kept me very interested, and even though we're talking about some complex issues and trauma, I thought it was written in a really compelling way. So, my favorite parts, some of my favorite parts, I'm sure I'll be interjecting with a lot of favorite parts, but I really enjoyed the vulnerability of this book, and I think that good writing, in my opinion, or the writing that I like the most, is the kind of writing where it's like blood on a page. It's the writer has sort of left everything out there, put everything out there, whether it's embarrassing or traumatic or makes them seem like a terrible person. I really enjoy reading that. And I think if I was a writer, that would be a really hard thing to do, right? I think I'd struggle with that a lot. Because in this book, we have the hypnosis, where he's having his breakdowns, and the recounting, where he's having to admit assault and being scared and terrified and really having both shocking and humiliating things happen. Whether or not this is a true story, it's in the title, Communion, a true story. Whether or not it's a true story, I find that the vulnerability and the sort of details and how gross things are at times really makes it something that I enjoyed. That sounds a little weird when I say it, but I think you know what I mean. Um, so I had mentioned to my friend that I didn't really enjoy the theorizing as much as I enjoyed the hypnosis and the storytelling. And this wasn't just because it gave me a lot of words that I couldn't pronounce very well, but um, because sometimes it felt like a reach and it felt unnecessary. Because what I was really there for was the heart of the matter, the meat, the sort of juicy parts of the story. And I would be happy just to um, have it left at the hypnosis, honestly, in the story. But he made the point that if those things had happened, it would make sense to then want to explain them. And Strieber is really taking us on a complete journey. And whether or not these things feel flimsy or whatever, we are given a view into, what it would be like, and probably what you would be searching for answers everywhere. And we don't reach any conclusions, but we need to try and search for something. And in that way, I enjoyed it or I started to see it as more of a device for the stories, and I could appreciate it in that way. One thing also, see, I'm looking at my notes. If I'm looking down, I've got some notes on this. Something else that bothered me a little bit was the ending. So we have Strieber saying this throughout, but driving it home at the end that he is not a believer, or he's not a skeptic, he's not a believer, he's not sure what he is. He's just having these experiences. And at first I felt like that was very maybe it didn't feel true in light of the story that he just spent however long it took to write and publish. But then I thought, well, yeah, how can you be a believer? Because we don't have any kind of set definition on what the thing is. It's not that we know that these are people from space or certain things from another planet. We have speculations about interdimensional beings, speculations on government conspiracies, speculations on. So there are all these things that the term, extraterrestrial, non human could be. So you can't really say that you believe in it or you don't believe in it, because what are you saying you believe in? What are you saying you don't believe in? So I kind of see it like that. I may be wrong, but this is just my own opinion. And I think it's reinforced by all of the ways that he's theorizing about it. My favorite moment in the theorizing, which you probably know, was when he starts to get into the more esoteric side of things. It reminded me of Aleister Crowley and Lamb. Maybe I'll put a picture up. It's not I don't find it a pleasant picture. I hate pictures of aliens. Even though I had one on the wall. But there's not a lot known about this, but this was in, I think, 1919, 1920, thereabouts. Aleister Crowley comes up with this picture. Doesn't say a lot about it, as far as I know. But it's gonna predate a lot of the gray alien, Western consciousness. And I think it's interesting. I think it fits into what Strieber was started to talk about like interdimensional beings and esoteric things. And I think I tend to enjoy those topics because they're very open-ended, and I also don't understand them at all. And so I tend to gravitate toward things that I don't understand and I could possibly never understand. I enjoy mystery. I enjoy a good mood. And I find that esoteric literature provides me with a lot of that. So it's interesting to have that pop into my mind while I'm reading Communion. It's like, oh, Aleister Crowley. maybe he saw aliens too. And that's the thing, I don't know how I feel about aliens. All I know is that I really like to read. And I tend to give the benefit of the doubt to the author. I tend to believe more than I am a skeptic about most things. I keep an open mind because I think it's enjoyable. It might not be the right thing to do, but it helps me have a good time. And let's see if I wrote anything down here. Oh yeah. Uh I really liked the initial description of the ship. I liked how it was messy. I liked how there was clothes on the floor or it smelled bad. You think about like interstellar travel, any kind of travel. If you've done any kind of extended travel, which I imagine that space travel, interdimensional travel, whatever kind of traveling these things are doing, it's probably going to get really smelly. If you've been in a car driven across country, things do get pretty smelly after a while. And I like that because there are moments in this book where you have the greys, the aliens, the extraterrestrials, and they just seem so human. It's weird. I like those moments a lot. That moment and how he thought that they felt afraid of him. Because I always thought of it like I think they're so much more advanced or so much better than people. But really, seeing that they have some kind of flaws is fun to think about. That's really fun to think about. Because that makes me then think like, okay, so we have this narrative in our culture. And that narrative is the extraterrestrial, and usually it's, something that's come down to destroy us or to study us or to save us or to teach us something, and we hope it's something good. But do you ever imagine that within that narrative, what if what if these things are getting abducted by something else? It's the bigger fish. So it's just aliens all the way up, I guess. Imagining these greys waking up in some ship that's even far more advanced than they are and having abduction experiences of their own. I don't know. Seems to me like there's always something bigger out there. A bigger fish. Something waiting to just eat you alive. In my opinion. My humble opinion. Let's see, what else did I write about? Yeah, I guess it is important. It is important to touch on the fact that Whitley Strieber is a writer. He is a fiction writer, and while I'm not too concerned with whether or not the story is true, um, that is something to consider. Do I think that you can be a fiction writer and still write a true story? Yes, absolutely. But I am gonna rewatch Communion because I feel like I know how Hollywood works. And I know that things just get so out of hand so fast and you can lose creative control in a movie very easily. So I'd be really curious if I could ask one question to Whitley Strieber, it'd be what was that experience of filming that movie? Are you happy with that movie? How much control did you end up with in the end? Because I can imagine that it could have been the kind of thing that you just wrote a book, somebody made a script, and you either signed off on it or didn't. Well, we'll kind of end it here. These were my rambling thoughts on Communion. I really enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed reading it here in on the YouTube, and I don't know what I'll read next, but I think I'll take a little bit of a break. I've got some things heating up in my life, so We'll see. But I will come back. Maybe we'll do some one-offs. I probably will do some one-off readings instead of a full book for a little while, but I think this was fun. I think it was successful. I think there's lots of ways for me to grow, and so let's just keep on growing. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you uh don't don't be too scared. Okay, well, so one last thing. One last thing before I go. I had a picture up. You probably saw it in the earlier videos. It was a painting that a friend did of mine. It was an alien. And after I started reading this book, my bed's over here, and it was sort of peeking out above the stairway, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd look over there, and it was giving me horrible sleep. So it's still there. It's just moved down a little bit. I have always had that reaction to aliens, even as a kid. I could not watch E.T. No, an abomination. That thing is so ugly. Mac and me, absolutely not. Burn it. But I like fear. I do like fear a lot, and so I'm always leaning into my fear, and this book was certainly that. So I guess maybe one of the questions it would be wise to talk about. I've never had an alien encounter. Not that I remember, and not that I wish to remember. So, but I also one last thing. Ah, I'm gonna have five one last things. I'm sorry. I was born in Putnam County, which he mentioned in the beginning of the book. When they saw that mass UFO sighting. Very interesting. Who knows? Anyway, if anything did happen to me, I don't need to know about it. I think I'll just keep living my life. You stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.